let me take the attendance before we just start it up. Yeah. So Hemant Kumar, Kartikeya, Laksharaj Singh,
Yes,
Matang
sir.
Sharma,
Yes, sir.
Mukul
Yes, sir.
Swami,
Present, sir.
Parth,
Present,
Prakash
sir.
Chaudhary,
Present, sir.
Good
Chandramohan
morning,
Singh,
sir.
Rahul Jevaria,
Present,
Rakesh
sir.
Meka, Rohan
Present, sir.
Modi, and Tirthak are
Present.
in the class at present. So today we are going to study about, you can say, oh, sorry, a mistake, it has come up. Yeah. We will be studying about the free consent. Okay, so we have already gone through minors and the other things, so free consent will be there. I hope we have done this, the transaction with the corporations and all. I think this is clear to all of you. Or is it anything remaining regarding this? Yeah, let me take this unsound mind we have done yesterday. Anyone? Come on. We have done with the unsound mind. I have told you about the drunkard also, that a person who is not in his senses, he should not, he is not capable of entering into a contract, and accordingly, the court provides him a proper justification, or you can say proper protection, that he may not enter into a contract, and if he enters into a contract, then the person has to the person has to actually prove that this that he has actually not even gone for any, you can say, what you call is uh, that he was in all his senses. So that's why we sometimes just take the this consent also, that the person is in his full capacity. So person who are disqualified or incapable of entering into a contract are the person who are adjudged as disqualified. Second is your alien enemies. If the war broke out between the two countries at the time. Next is your foreign sovereign and ambassadors, professional persons, corporations. I think we had to take today that what are corporations and why we just need to, have the corporations, why the corporations are considered as such that they cannot enter into a contract. Or have I taken it up? I suppose, and the married women also. So let me just take the corporation and the married women, and then we will proceed further. So the other person to the incapacity are the corporation. A corporation is an artificial person created by law. That is a company registered under the Companies Act. So a company which is registered under the Companies Act, it is bound by its articles of association and the memorandum of association, beyond which it should not go. So any contract done with the company which is beyond the memorandum of association will be null and void. So a company, a person has to just see whosoever is entering into a contract. It is his duty to see whether the company is capable of entering into a contract or not. So if the person is not at all able to see the contract, the contract will be totally void. Further, the companies, because they are artificial person, they cannot be, compelled, or they cannot be such type of contracts which cannot which cannot be enforceable, which cannot be possible by the company. Like a company cannot marry other company, a company cannot have a citizenship. So such type of things which are bound by some personal thing, which actually the artificial persons cannot do. You cannot just enter into a contract with the company. For example, one cannot enter into a contract that, okay, I will marry the company. Okay, so such type of contracts are also void. They are not at all executable. With married women in India, there is no difference between man and women. But at the time when there were differences between married women, men and women, women were actually said to be the predominant. The dominance of the women were under the dominance of the men, and men actually used to dominate the society at that time. The women also were not at all capable of entering into a contract. It's given here because it was given before. So now as such, so there is a no such thing which happens now. Therefore, even in England also the married woman has a full contractual capacity, and she can sue and she can be sued at her own name. So before this particular married women tort Fiercers Act 1935, the husband was responsible for all the contract with the wife used to do. Okay, so now and nowadays everything can be done by the women itself. So this is no more applicable. So today we will be going with free consent. What is a free consent? A basis of the contract and the agreement is a mutual consent. So what is the basis? What is the crux of the agreement between two parties? It is a mutual consent. That is, in other words, the parties should mean the something in the same sense and agree voluntarily. Means it is when there is a consent, the party is said to be consensus ad idem, that is meeting of their minds. So meeting of the minds regarding anything, consensus ad idem must be there. At the same time, not only the consent is required, but it must be a free consent. Both have consented in the same way, in the same time, at the same sense for the same thing. That is called consensus ad idem. But is the consensus ad idem affected by unfree consent, or is the consent free? So consent is not free. If the consent is not free, it has been caused either by coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation, fraud, or mistake. These elements, if present, may vitiate the contract, or it may not actually let the contract valid. So in this case, for coercion, coercion means threatening. So if you are threatening somebody and at the gunpoint you are asking him to do certain things, or for the or you can say you are asking some other person, okay, I will commit suicide if you will not do this thing. So such type of consent, if taken, will be the contract will be voidable at the option of the aggrieved party, because here two things are there. If the contract is you can say compromised by both the parties, then it is void. And if it is at the option of one party, means one party is agreeing but other party is not agreeing. So what actually makes a complete contract? That other party also should agree in the same way, in the same sense, and that also should be free. So in that case, what happens? The consent will be affected by coercion or undue influence or misrepresentation or fraud. Means if it is affected by four of these, then it is voidable at the option of aggrieved party, because there is only one party which is actually not agreeing on the, or whose consent is not free. Other person is ready for everything. He has actually is there for means he has actually consented for. He is actually agreeing because the contract is in his favor. So if the other person is not at all agreeing, at that time it is said to be influenced by four of these, and then it will be you can say what, it will be voidable at the option of the aggrieved party, because that one party is not agreeing. If all the parties agree, then there is a valid contract in the same way, in the same sense. And at the same time, if the person is not agreeing, or you can say one person is not agreeing, then there will be voidable. But what if both of the persons are not agreeing? If both of the persons are not agreeing, it means it is a mistake. It has happened by a mistake. So mistake is one in which the contract will be void. Otherwise, the contract will be voidable at the option of agreed party if it is affected by coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation, or fraud. So let us take these things one by one. So when the consent is not free, the contract may be turned out to be void or voidable according to the nature of the flaw in the consent. When there is no consent, there can be no contract. That happens in the case of mutual mistakes. So where there is a consent but it is not free, the contract is generally voidable at the option of aggrieved party. That's what I have told you. Okay. In case of misrepresentation, fraud, coercion, undue influence, the consent of one party is indeed or is caused or is supposed is caused by supposed existence of a fact which did not exist, then it will be void. or otherwise if you can say certain, if one party is agreeing on certain thing, then it will be voidable. If both the parties are not at all agreeing, or if the contract has happened by mistake, means both the parties do not intended to enter into a contract, but they have actually entered, then it will be called as a mistake, and in that case it will be void, not voidable. Okay, so four things are for voidable: coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation, and fraud, and mistake, it will be void. So please remember this. Okay, further. So let us study one by one. So coercion is under section 15 of the Indian Contract Act 1872. So it means that the committing or threatening to commit any act forbidden by Indian Penal Code, or unlawful detaining or threatening to detain any property to the prejudice of any person, whatever with the intention of causing any person to enter into an agreement. So the intention must be, so this can be broken down into certain you can say parts. Okay, so what are these? So one thing is there has to be a threatening, and threatening can be present, or means it can take form of a future one. So if a person is threatening now and is threatening for certain he may do in future, and because of that he is compelling the other person to enter into a contract, then it will be called coercion. So next thing is that it must be forbidden by Indian Penal Code, IPC. Indian Penal Code is a criminal law which actually comprise of all this. These sections you might have heard of: section 420, section 302, section 307, 302, dafa 302, and all these things you might have gone through in films. So these all things are actually sections of Indian Penal Code. 420 we just consider it as a something is actually section 420 is regarding fraud. So that's why it is that it is said that okay, after the movie Shri 420 has come, we have started using okay ye to 420 hai, ye to 420 hai. This is, it means that he is a fraud. But what do you mean by this 420? If you will use this 420 somewhere else in outside India, people will not be able to understand what you are saying, because this actually is a Indian Penal Code section on which movie was there, Shri 420, and that's why this has come into the custom that calling people 420 is something like that. He is fraud, but it is a section of IPC. So anything which is prohibited by IPC, for example, even committing suicide, you are taking someone on the gunpoint, you are threatening him for that I will beat you. So these all things are threatening, and because of which now further what you are doing, either this or unlawful detaining or threatening to detain any property to the prejudice of any person, means a property which is belonging to someone else, and you are saying that I will not give you that property if you will not do this. Please enter into a contract with me, otherwise I will not do the property. Please enter into a contract with me, otherwise I will jump in the water. So if the consent has been taken in this manner, then it will be affected by coercion. So afterwards, a person who has given the consent in such threatening will be having an option of means dividing the contract. So that is what it says. So and further, the intention must be to cause a person to enter into a contract. So these are the features. So simply stated, by doing any act forbidden by Indian Penal Code is coercion, even though such act is done in place where the Indian Penal Code is not in force. For example, there was a case where a person actually threatened other. Means
Sir, I have
he
a question,
actually
sir.
told that because this where this in IPC is not applicable. There was one case for this also, that for example, there are two people, A and B, who were returning to India by a ship. So when the ship was passing through high seas, A threatened B to throw him into sea if he will not sell his imported watch to him. So B agreed to sell his imported watch under the caution. On reaching Mumbai, B refused to deliver the imported watch to A. So what A did, A filed a suit against him because the contract was there. He has taken a contract. Okay, I just to agree to sell you my watch for this much of amount. So he sued him. Here, A has employed coercion, therefore he will not succeed because IPC is not applicable on high seas. You cannot say that IPC is not applicable on high seas. So A has employed coercion, therefore he will not succeed. Why? Because IPC though is not applicable on seas, but is applicable at the place Mumbai where the suit was filed. And secondly, at that time, it is expressly written in Indian Contract Act that even if the IP is not applicable at that point of time or at that place where such coercion has been done, still it will come under the coercion itself. So this is something which is related to this. So at the same time, something which is forbidden by IPC, one more case is there, uh, Rangaya Kama versus Alvar Shetty. So the fact of the cases were like this, that one widow was forced to adopt a boy. This actually case is very old. This is 1889 case, Rangaya Kama versus Alvar Shetty. So in this case, a widow was forced to adopt a boy by her relatives, and the threatening given to her was that if she will not adopt the boy, they will not remove the dead body of her husband for cremation. So the cremation, which is the right of everyone after death, and the right of the nears and dears also. So that was actually she was threatened that she will be deprived of such thing, and she gave the consented at that time. So the cremation happened, and afterwards, when she was forced to just adopt that boy, she refused, and the court also adjudged that she is correct. She can refuse because that consent which she gave at the time was taken under the threatening, and it was a commission of means it was commission of such an act which is actually forbidden by the Indian Penal Code or the law and during the time in force at that time. So, and even I have told you about the one more thing is there over here written. There's unlawful detaining or threatening to detain a property. So there is one more case which is Muthaiya versus Muthu Kurrappa. It is 1927 case, and the fact of the case was like this, that in this case an agent refused to hand over the books of accounts. Now books of accounts belongs to whom? Books of accounts belongs to the person who is the principal. So he was the agent and he refused to actually hand over the books of accounts of a business to the new agent unless the principal release him from all his liability. Actually, what happened during his course of his time, he has taken some loan from the principal. So the loan which he has taken, he actually approached the principal that you have to relieve me from this loan. Then only I will give your books of accounts. So principal at that time, what happened? Okay, he just released a deed in his favor. Okay, I relieve you from all my loans, and then afterwards when the books were handed over, then he again filed suit against him just to in order to enforce his debts, and he succeeded. Why? Because the consent of relieving him from all his debts was taken under the pressure. So this is what it is, you can say these all things actually comprise of coercion. So if coercion is there, so the execution of contract is on the it is actually on the discretion of the other party. Okay, so even there was a threat to commit suicide also is also this also amounts to coercion. So there was one more case, Chikkam Amayya Raju versus Chikkam Sheshma, 1912 case. So in this case, the husband held out a threat of suicide to his wife and son that he would commit suicide if they did not execute a release deed with regard to certain property in favor of his brothers who claimed the property as their own. So wife and the son executed a release deed in the so that that should not happen, means just that it was a threat that he will commit suicide, and then afterwards when the things became normal, actually those brothers actually filed a suit, and then after when all the senses of this person came back, then he thought that he will not he will not let his wife and son execute the deed, and that what happened, and it was voidable at the option of wife and son. So these all are the cases of quotient which we have gone through. So I think all the things have been included over here. So there are other things also which are given over here. So one more thing is there. It may be pointed out that quotient may proceed from any person and may be directed against any person, even a stranger, and also against the goods also. Okay, so example, unlawful detention of goods is also there. So that also can be actually the effect of the quotient. So it can be directed to any party. So for example, A threatens to kill B if he does not sell his car, which is costing rupees 8 lakhs and rupees 2 lakhs to him. So here the caution is being directed against the party, the same party. But if A threatens to kill C, that is wife of B, if B doesn't sells his car for the same amount, so in this case the caution has been to some other party for execution of the contract from some other party. So in that case also the caution will be equally applicable. So next is your undue influence. So any problem regarding quotient till now which we have studied? So you can please tell me if you are having any. I will be happy to just answer you and solve the problem. Anyone? Just Khushi Shekhawat.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what is quotient?
Uh, s-
Yes. What is quotient? Yes, Khushi.
Sir, quotient is an agreement
Quotient is an agreement.
between two parties.
Quotient is an agreement between two parties, Khushi. I hope you are not sleeping now. Or had you been sleeping while I was taking the class?
Yes,
I have taught you this topic in detail with all the examples. I think I have given you more than 5, 6 examples. Still, you are not able to understand what the quotient is, the basic thing. Then, what's the use of you know taking the class? And that too online. I'm bothering you and myself both. Quotient is a threatening actually. Okay, Khushi. So some things,
yes, yes,
कुछ चीजें जो आप खुशी से ना करें ना और डर से करें, तो वो जो डर होता है ना, वो जहाँ
yes,
डर
sir.
होता है वहाँ पे खुशी नहीं होती है.
Okay, sir.
नहीं, ओके नहीं, मैं सही बोल रहा हूँ कि नहीं?
Yes, sir.
जहाँ डर है वहाँ खुशी कहाँ से आएगी?
Yes, sir.
ओके, तो अगर किसी से डरा धमका के कोई चीज कराई जाए, तो दैट इज कॉल्ड कोर्शन.
Quotient.
ओके,
Okay,
या,
sir.
एंड एट दैट टाइम द कंसेंट इज आल्सो नॉट फ्री. आई होप आई एम नॉट एट ऑल कोर्सिंग यू टू अटेंड माय क्लासेस. मैंने आपको डराया तो नहीं ना मेरी क्लास अटेंड करो?
No, sir.
फिर तो आप खुशी से आने चाहिए ना, बट आपकी तरफ से रेस्पॉन्स तो आता ही नहीं है. तो
Yes,
मैं
sir.
भी अब कल से यही करूंगा कि भाई सारा का सारा कोर्स जो है वो पढ़ के खत्म कर दूंगा एंड विल नॉट आस्क यू एनीथिंग. मेरा कोर्स भी ओवर हो जाएगा और आप पढ़ो नहीं पढ़ो हमें मतलब ही नहीं. ऐसा करूं क्या? तो फिर आप लोग पार्टिसिपेट तो करते ही नहीं हो.
Sorry, sir.
कार्तिक राजपूत, व्हाट इज फ्री कंसेंट? मतंग शर्मा, कम ऑन. ये खाली लॉगिन करके छोड़ना है. प्रकाश चौधरी,
Yes, sir.
व्हाट इज
Yes, sir.
फ्री कंसेंट?
Sir, free consent.
व्हाट इज कंसेंट?
So basically,
So what do you mean by consent? Consent क्या होता है? रोहन मोदी, तीर्थक, तीर्थक, कीर्ति भाई, फुलतारिया, हाँ शौर्य, what is consent?
So consent means whenever agrees to do something.
Consent is something giving the assent in affirmation.
Acceptance.
Yes, I agree.
Yes,
Agreement is consent. Consent is a very essential part of agreement.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is free consent?
Free consent means whenever both the parties agree to do something with same sense of mind, like
So
they both are thinking the same thing.
that is consensus addendum. That is not free consent. That is called consensus addendum. What is free consent?
So can I try?
Yeah, why not? Please. I was waiting for someone.
Pre-consent.
Where were you before?
Sir, I was in the class itself. So pre-consent means giving advice in
free, not pre. FRW
free consent.
Free. Muft.
So free consent means giving advices which is like good for them in an agreement.
Free advices.
Yeah.
Karthikeya Sharma, you were also not in the class.
No,
Free
sir,
is not a free advice always. Free consent is something with the consent is not affected by certain. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So when they agree on the same thing, also only is on the free consent now.
No, free. That is a consent. That is consensus added. A meeting of minds. Meeting of minds is different from giving a free consent. So what is a free consent, sure? Consent is said to be free when it is not affected by coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation, and fraud. Means when both the parties have agreeing, and there is no pressure on their minds, or otherwise they are not befooled to agree on that. Okay, so two things will put pressure on the mind. Number one is coercion, second is undue influence. Okay,
yes,
so two things will not put pressure, but it actually will. They may be befooled. So one is fraud, and other is misrepresentation. Okay, so these are the things which are there, which has to be there. Okay, so I have already covered coercion. Coercion is threatening. If I give some threatening to someone to enter into a contract, then I have coerced him or her for entering into the contract itself. Okay, then the things will not be said to be free. Okay, and at the same time, if I am taking undue influence, if someone is unduly influenced, at that time also the means you are giving consent in influence of someone. Suppose Asaram Bapu gives some actually in his influence of being a guru, he may have influenced someone in order to just force someone to enter into a contract with him for transferring the property. He is having huge properties. So, and now the cases are being opened up that there was a undue influence which has actually, forced other persons to give his property to him. Now, yesterday itself, there was a decision of the court, though he was to be hanged till death, but again, he has been given the imprisonment, life imprisonment now has been announced by the court against him. So it's like that. So if a guru is in a position to tell his disciple, then his disciple, in the influence of the guru, enters into a contract with him for transferring any property or does anything, right? So in that case, the consent will be said to be caused by undue influence. So we will study in detail about undue influence. Okay, so undue influence is under section 16. So under section 15 it was coercion. Under section 16 it's undue influence. So under section 16 of the Indian Contract Act 1872, a contract is said to be produced by undue influence where the relations subsisting between the parties are such that one of the parties is in the position to dominate the will of other and uses that position to obtain an unfair advantage over the other. So most important thing over what are the elements? Number one is a dominant position, that one must be in the dominant position as related to other, and he has used that dominant position in order to take an unfair advantage of other. So the words unfair advantage do not limit the jurisdiction to the case where the transaction would obviously unfair between the person dealing on the equal footing. So people, those who are on equal footing, those who are on equal footing, they cannot just take the unfair advantage of this provision of having unfair advantage. What I mean to say is, unfair advantage will not decide the undue influence, but undue influence must decide that there is a unfair advantage. So first of all, it has to be seen that there is undue influence, and then it has to be seen whether the advantage taken under the undue influence is unfair or not. Okay. So in the words of Lord Kingston, the principle applies to every case where the influence is acquired and abused, where confidence is reposed and betrayed. So if you are being betrayed, if you are being befooled, and that too, or otherwise you are actually forced to do certain things, not by threatening, but by undue influence, then it is said to be affected as such, and it is said to be abused. Subsection 2 of section 16 provides that a person is deemed to be in a position to dominate the will of another where he holds a real or apparent authority over the other, or where he stands in a fiduciary relationship to others. So these are the two things. One is a fiduciary relationship, and other thing is the apparent authority. So example, minor and the guardian, trustee and the beneficiary, solicitor and the client, doctor and the patient, guru and the disciple. So these are all are the examples where there is a undue influence. So first you have to see the relationship between the two parties before deciding whether there is a undue influence or not. So there is, however, no presumption of undue influence in the relation of debtor and creditor, because both are at the same foot. Husband, wife, both are at the same foot. Until unless wife is a pardanashin woman, in which it is where the husband actually dominates the wife. Until unless she is a pardanashin woman, then the case will be different, or otherwise in other case, the everything, even landlord and the tenant. So these are the relations which do not actually are not caused by undue influence, because in these relations the things are at the equality. So people are at the equal foot in these things. So in these relations, the parties has to prove that undue influence has been exercised on him, there being no presumption as to existence of undue influence. So it is not assumed that every time there will be undue influence. If the relations are at the same foot, then the burden of proof is totally different. Then the parties has to prove, the person who is actually filing a suit has to prove that there was undue influence. But in case where the contract but where the contract is between minor and guardian, trustee and beneficiary, in which it is prima facie, it can be seen that there can be undue influence, then the other party has to prove that there was no undue influence. Means in case of minor and guardian, it is well notified that minor will be having a undue influence by the guardian. Trustee and beneficiary will be unduly influenced by the trustee. Solicitor and client, a client will be undue influenced by the lawyer or the solicitor. So in this case, the solicitor, trustee and the guardian, they have to prove that there was no undue influence. Or otherwise, if the things are on same footing like husband and wife, debtor, creditor, then the person who is filing a suit should actually prove that there was undue influence. So where he makes a contract with the person whose mental capacity is temporarily or permanently affected by reason of age, illness, or mental or the bodily distress. So this will again be, there will again be a reason of having a undue influence, because one person is serving other. his life is totally dependent on him who is actually ill or mental. The ill or mental's life, or a person of old age, will be, you can say, the person who is serving them will be having a undue influence over that person. Okay, so doctor and patient even is an example over here, that because one's life is in the hand of other, so other will be having a dominant position and can influence the other person in order to enter into a contract which can be against the will of other. So let us just take some illustration. A having advanced money to his son. So A has advanced some money to his son during his minority. Upon B's coming of age, by misuse of parental influence, A obtains a bond upon B for a greater amount. Here, A employs a undue influence because the relationship is like that father son. But here the thing is that son has influenced the father because of the this relationship. Okay, I will just leave you, or I will go somewhere else, or something like that. So the influence for one or the other way is there. Okay. So next is a man enfeebled by the disease or age is induced by B's influence over him as a medical attendant to agree to pay B a unreasonable sum for his professional service. For example, a doctor is saying someone that, okay, I will save your life, but this will be my fee, which is totally unreasonable. At that time, B may agree, but afterwards he may refuse, because the fee is totally unreasonable and because of the undue influence he has entered into the contract. So in this case also, one more case is there, but the cases which I have already told you are more than sufficient to explain what actually undue influence is, and you will be able to understand it. This you can even go through, that a parent stands in a fiduciary relation towards his child, and any transaction between them by which any benefit is produced by the parent to himself or to the third party at the expense of the child will be viewed with a jealousy by the court of equity, and the burden will be on the parent or the third party claiming the benefit of showing that child, while entering into a transaction, had a independent advice, that he thoroughly understood the nature of the transaction, and that he was removed from all the new influences when the gift was made. So in this case, what happened? A child was there, and the child was having his own property, and he actually made some gift in the influence of his parents to a third party. Actually, that third party were the relatives of the parents. But at this time, if you see, because the child is a minor one, and the parents who are there might have taken some, might have influenced him. So the court will take it like this, that there is a reason to believe that the minor has been influenced by his parents to execute a deed in favor of the third party. So in this case, the third party and the parents have to prove that they have given a complete, clear, you can say, right to the child to decide whether he should execute the gift or not. So here the burden of proof will be something different. Okay, so this is what is undue influence. So and where there is a presumption of undue influence, the presumption can be cancelled if full disclosure of all material fact is made, consideration is said to be adequate, and the weaker party was in receipt of the independent legal advice. If there is certain things which are influential, or you can say the relationship are that one is able to dominate the will of other, in that case these 3 points are to be proved, or you can say these 3 points are the you can say key points. If these are proved, then it is said that there is no undue influence. So it will be likewise. Okay. So next is, suppose for example there is a I just told you about the this Pardanashin woman. So the expression Pardanashin denotes the complete seclusion. So if a woman is completely secluded, means she actually is in Parda, means always actually she is secluded from the entire world. There's a woman who goes to court. Now she will be called Pardanashin woman. A Pardhanashin woman will be called, will be that only actually who is actually, it is not like that the woman who is wearing a burqa or who is having a ghungat will be called a Pardhanashin woman. So therefore, a woman who goes to court, give evidences, who fixes the rent with the tenants, collect the rents, who communicates when necessary in the matter of business with men and other members of the own family, she cannot be regarded as a Pardhanashin woman. So this was one case which was decided in the case of Ismail Musafi versus Hafiz Bo. So this actually was a case where a woman was, she actually wanted to just take a plea that I'm a Pardhanashin woman and I'm my all my things are being influenced by my man and he is responsible for all the things. He has actually influenced me to enter into a contract. So it can be proved that she was not a Pardhanashin woman at all and the contract done by her, she will herself be responsible. Next, the principle to be applied to the transaction with the Pardhanashin women are founded on the equity and good conscience. Equity and good conscience means she is actually secluded from the world and she is not at all able to, you can say, take her own decision, or her decisions are being taken under the influence of the person whom she has got married. Okay, so in that case only there will be a undue influence, otherwise there will be no undue influence. So if she is having all the liberty to take his free advice, independent advice, and she understands the contract, so it will be called that her consent is also, you know, proper and it is not influenced by the undue influence. Next is unconscionable transaction. So unconscionable transactions is one which makes an exorbitant profit of others' distress by a person who is in a dominant position. Like for example, if somebody is in need and you are taking very high interest, so merely the fact that the rate of interest is very high in a money lending transaction shall not make it unconscionable. Why? Because a person may be in need, he has come with all his senses and asked the other person to just lend me some money, and the person has lended because he also wants to make the good use of the opportunity. But if the rate of interest is very exorbitant, means it is very, very high, the court regards the transaction unconscionable. The burden of proving that no undue influence or exercise lies on the creditor in that case. So it has been held that urgent need of money on the part of borrower does not itself place the lender in a position to dominate his will within the meaning of the section. It means that if a person has come to just take the money from some other person, and because the other person was in need, he has exorbitantly increased the rate of interest. But if the rate of interest is very, very, very high, it means the person and that person, actually what the thing is, the person who is going to take the loan is actually at all his liberty whether to accept the rate of interest or not. But if he is there is no option to him, then it can be said that there may be undue influence. But this case is also not applicable in the current time, because we have a lot of avenues of taking the loan, and the rate of interest is also very, very competitive. So this case is also not applicable, but as this is the case, I should just discuss it. That's why I have discussed it with you. So I hope you are able to understand what the Pardhanashin women are and how they just go for the things. Okay. So that is all about today. So we still have a misrepresentation, fraud and mistake remaining, which we will be studying tomorrow, so that in order to make you understand what the in-depth about all these things. So thank you for today, and let me just take the attendance and then you will be set free also. Okay. Fine. So Gautam, Harshit,
Yes, sir.
Himmat Kumar, Kartik Rajput,
Yeah.
Kartikeyan Sharma, Khushi
Yes,
Shekhawat,
sir.
Laksharaj Singh,
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
present, sir.
Goyal, Matang Sharma,
Present, sir.
Present, sir.
Mukul Swami,
Sir.
Parth Narendra Bhai, Prakash Chaudhary,
Present, sir.
Rahul Javaria,
Sir.
Rakesh Raika, Ravi Raman,
Present, sir.
Rohan Modi, Sandeep Singh Bhati, Sangya Gupta, Shaurya Dikshit, Tarush
Yes.
Mudgal, and Tirthak. See, there is a option of downloading the attendance. Shaurya, can you see the three dots up over there? Are you on your computer or are you on your mobile? Shaurya?
So mobile,
Mobile, so you do not have that. Otherwise, there are three dots, and
3 dots,
you and me
download.
both are having
Yes,
options of downloading the attendance from here.
yes,
So
sir.
I want you to be on your computer from tomorrow and onwards, so that you will be able to do whatever is required over here.
Sir, I
So
saw that yesterday, but I don't have access to that. You
means
made
you
me
don't
the
have computer.
organizer, but I cannot see the option.
You don't have the. Do you have the computer with you?
Yes, sir.
Then you can. Then only you can do this. Otherwise,
Yes,
no.
I checked it yesterday on my laptop only, and I
No, no, no.
didn't see
While
that.
the class is going on, it can only be downloaded at that time. No other
Okay, sir.
time.
Again tomorrow.
So though till now we have just gone for all the attendances by saying, actually this actually comprise of the login and logout time of the student. So those who are logging in at the time of the class is ending, they will not be marked present. So they must consider this, because there are some people whom I can see they have just not logged on. So they will not be able to get the attendance at all. Okay, because they are actually befooling. You can befool me, you cannot befool the system. This is what is goodness about it. Anyways, no problem. So see you tomorrow. Take care and have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye, sir.